Welcome, everyone, once again to the Sleeping with Sonja podcast. I am thrilled to have with us today none other than Dr. Stephen Pilot.
Wow.
Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. What an incredible honor. What an exciting time to see you. Amazing.
So let's talk a little bit first about the fact that your story blows my mind because there's nothing you can't do. So we're going to talk a little bit about who you are and who you are to me.
Okay.
And why things like us shooting the shit on a couch in our pajamas is so important compared to the life we used to have.
I agree.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Steve. What do you do?
So I am a certified registered nurse anesthetist.
Okay.
Have you heard of that job?
Rumor. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Sleeping with Sonja is not a title that's a bait and switch. I give anesthesia for a living. But if you decide to tune in for other reasons and then stay for the positive message, fine. Love it. Here for it.
We are experts at sleep, putting people to sleep.
We are experts.
We are experts at being with people while they are sleeping.
Yes. So we're going to make that very, very clear in this disclaimer from the beginning.
I love it.
From the start.
Other than that, we've been friends for a while.
Has it been like 6 years
It's
now?
been 6 years, but we've been intertwined before that. And I think you and I have the quintessential, like, hot girl, gay man
1000%.
relationship.
I mean,
it's like we build each other up. We, like, text out of nowhere. Like, you are fierce. You are perfect. You are wonderful.
There's so much love that we have for each other, and it's genuine and it's sincere.
For sure. For sure.
And I think that's something that started very, very early on in our relationship and our friendship.
Absolutely.
And the crazy part is, so now, you have a doctorate in nurse anesthesiology, and you provide care to patients, obviously, but there's so much more to you than that.
For sure.
And I think that what's really important for people, especially for me, even just starting this show, was let's talk about the things that make us human outside of what we do every day.
1000%.
And I know that you are also an assistant professor.
I am.
Which is like, just put your glasses on and put us out of our misery with the professor thing. We are all living for it.
I do it more for the sports coat, sexy professor look.
See.
I mean, I love shaping the minds of young nurse anesthesia residents, but I also love my, my sports coat professor moment.
It's a vibe. It's an aesthetic. It's an aesthetic. And for me, like the red glasses have 18 years going at this point. They're here to stay. So yes, the professor thing, we love it. So you're a professor.
I am.
You're practicing at the height of your career.
I am.
You're actively engaged in the community. But at the end of the day, I think what makes you so different from other people is there's this mindset and this perspective among people in healthcare. And I think it goes beyond, we started as nurses, right? Mm-hmm. It goes beyond nursing. It's something that's prevalent among medical students in the medical profession and anyone in any sort of an arena where they, I think, give direct patient care. There's this level of sort of toxicity.
Yeah.
And bullying and hazing. And there's something that you bring that's a no-nonsense approach to not tolerating any of that.
I feel like from a small child, I grew up in a family where my parents were divorced. I actually grew up with my grandparents. They were, old school mindset. You went to church every Sunday. You followed the rules. You were a good person. You did what was right. And you spoke up against things that you saw as an injustice. And I feel like that was embedded in me as a small child. And I've kind of carried that through my life. And as I've evolved as a person and as I've evolved as a professional, it's something that stayed true to my heart. And I've had experience along the way where I've seen bullying or hazing to medical residents, nurse anesthesia residents, new nurses. I've experienced it myself along the way. And it's just something I don't tolerate or stand for. And I come from the mindset of, how do we make this better?
Right.
How do we make this an inclusive environment? And how do we just have fun doing it?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you have to have fun at work with what you do. We have patients' lives in our hands.
Yep.
It's serious. I tell people all the time, my mantra in life is work hard, play hard. I have a stressful job. I see how quickly things can go wrong in someone's life, as you've experienced as well. And when I'm outside of work, I just want to have fun, and I want to be myself, and I want to be loved for who I am, and I want to love others for who they are.
Whew, I have goosebumps. I have chills when I hear that.
That was a little deep, wasn't
No,
it?
I mean, listen, there's no small talk here. We get deep very, very
We
quickly.
go deep.
And I think that's a testament to the fact that you truly and sincerely believe. You know, I tell people every day, I am a witness to the worst day in people's lives every single day. And I know you feel the same. And I know that there are very many of us who are listeners who have worked. It doesn't necessarily have to be in healthcare. No. But we are all going through it. And we are all deep in it. And if you can't sit there and laugh or showcase joy or bring an element of, I know things are hard, but let's stop for a moment and have a reset.
Of course.
You are the eternal, you're like the sun. And everyone around you just has this, everyone gravitates toward you. And I think that for so many reasons, it comes down to the fact that they feel safe with you and they can trust you. And that's not just your students who adore you. It's also the people who are in your life, the patients who you take care of, probably strangers, probably your Uber driver. I'm sure your Uber driver was like, here, I'm going to share my journey with you.
Every time I get in an Uber, I'm like, oh, I just want to sit here in silence. And the next thing I know, I'm diving deep into like their childhood trauma and how can I help you? And let's share stories.
I think that you and you are the gay male version of me in many ways.
1,000%.
And, you know, I recently had an Uber ride. My car broke down and it was very, very stressful. It was after a 12-hour shift. It was a very crazy day and the engine could have exploded. It was an error on the part of the people who did the maintenance. And the next morning I said, okay, I'm going to take an Uber to work. It's going to be fine. We're going to figure it out because at the end of the day, I was safe. The car was okay, whatever. Right. It's a financial hit, but we'll figure it out.
Right.
So I get into the car and immediately the Uber driver it's as though he looked at me and said, you know what? That one seems like a talker. And by the time we get to the hospital, he took me the long way to show me the historical route of where George Washington and his troops had done something that was important around the time of the Gettysburg Address. And I just had to sit there and take it.
And I bet you were joyful. And you're like, this is so great. I've always wondered where George Washington, put his lunch bag down when he crossed the Delaware River.
But like you feel bad. And it's like, this man is so filled with joy. And I know you have whatever the opposite of resting bitch face is. I know you have it too. People just want to share with you. But it's more than just being approachable. It's your energy.
Thank you.
It's your energy. And energetically, when people want to come around you and just say, here, be a part of my life, you get that sense.
Yeah.
So
this is what I was talking about when I said we build each other up. Like
100%.
How amazing are you? Thank you.
100%. And I think it's really, we see the worst every single day.
Yeah.
And I think we, in many ways, more than many others, have that sort of excuse of, well, you don't know how hard I've had it, or you don't know how stressful it is. And sometimes we take that negativity with us and it pours over into the outside elements of our life.
Right.
Relationships, friendships, family dynamics, whatever the case may be. So when you tell us, I want to have fun and I want to work hard, but I also want to live my life.
Yeah.
What does it mean for you to live your life?
For me, just living my life is experiencing every day like it's my last. I want to do things that are monumental and exciting and fun, and I want to see the world, and I want to travel to every possible place, yep. And I know you feel the same way, sure. Because, again, like it always goes back to my grandparents, who I love so incredibly much, who thankfully are still with us, who, kind of lived the same day every day and settled down and never left that like 5-block radius. And like, that's their world. And they think I'm absolutely insane for hopping on a plane and going to Italy or going to Germany or whatever. But like, I see the joy on their face that they're like, wow, he really is figured out what life is about and experiences it to the max.
Oof. It just, it makes me think so deeply about how much has changed for all of us over the last few years.
Yeah.
And, just today I was receiving lots of memories on my phone. COVID was 4 years ago.
I know.
And if you think about how much you as a person have evolved and how much has happened in your life in 4 years, that feels like it could have been a million years ago. And how much that has changed, I think, so many of us, especially in healthcare, and really lit a fire under our ass to say, this life is meant to be lived.
Yeah. I remember it was around Easter because I think I worked in the COVID ICU on Good Friday. And we were like talking amongst ourselves, like, what are people doing for Easter? What did we give up for Lent? And it just was like, this is hell. Like, being here is what I think hell is like. Watching people die, on the phone explaining to loved ones, hey, you can't come, but can I pass along this message? What can I do? There's a man who was a police officer that I had shared with him that my father was a police officer, and we just connect. He was my patient, intubated, extubated. I just think of how transformative that time was, not only for healthcare, but just like me as a person.
Sure.
Again, it comes down to you work hard, you see the worst of the worst, and it is just a catalyst for, hey, I need to live my life because I don't know when this gift is going to be over.
Sure. I recently had a conversation with a friend who happens to be a psychic medium, and we had a conversation that was sort of tangential to this. And the question became, how did people change in terms of what their expectations were of the future since that experience? And he said people were less inclined to say, tell me about the specifics of my boyfriend or girlfriend or relationship. And they're much more now invested in their own spiritual growth and evolution.
Yeah.
And I think that we exist in a space that's very sterile and highly scientific and highly by the book, right? We go to work and we have to exhibit this sense of hypervigilance with everything we do. You have plan A, B, C, and D, and you can't exist in this state of flow.
No.
It's rigid.
It's very rigid.
It's science. It's specific. So when you leave the walls of whatever it is that you're doing, and you have this sense of, I've seen what hell looks like. And I've lived through what hell looks like. And I think many of us have our own lived experience that resonates with that. It really encourages you to say, how can I go explore the world? How can I go learn from another person? How can I go taste this meal and actually enjoy it?
Yeah.
How can I go listen to this music and actually sit in the moment?
And just take that time to absorb the energy and the vibe and just, take a breath, right? I wake up in the morning and at 5:15 in the morning, my alarm goes off and I am go, go, go until I go to sleep.
Right.
And I can tell you down to the minute what I'm going to be doing at 7:15, what I'll most likely be doing at 12. I'm going to leave work at 7 p.m. and then I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work this out because it's Wednesday. So when you could step out of that bubble and take some time to yourself and just kind of like look around. We're in New York City. I'm just looking around. And I'm like, wow, we're so small.
Right.
And this noise is incredible. I'm not this goofy. I swear to God.
But it's just the sense of wonder. There's a sense of wonder. And when you can, this is something that I've told people, and it's something that I've learned through the last few years of after my entire life, shit hit the fan. And I had a lot of major changes that happened during the height of COVID that resulted in me finally stopping and saying, why am I always thinking about the goddamn future and not existing in the moment today?
Yeah.
And when you can walk around New York City and feel the wonder and the energy and the buzz, that means that you're actually existing in the moment.
Absolutely.
So in terms of what you do and as a mentor and as a leader, how much does mindfulness come into play?
Mindfulness is everything. Mindfulness is everything, and hard work and dedication also come into that. I feel like I got here for working hard, and having a plan and being mindful of how my actions today will affect my future tomorrow. And I try to instill that in my colleagues, in people that I mentor, people that mentor me. I think the symbiotic relationship of the mentor and the mentee, it's not just one person giving to someone who looks up to them.
Right.
I think both the mentor and the mentee grow in those situations. I mean, I feel like I learned more mentoring people about my profession, about myself, about my education style, about my style in life, helping someone else grow. It's like that old thing that we fill other people's buckets,
Sure.
right? And everyone carries around this bucket, and we try to fill other people up. But at the same time, we're filling ourselves, and they're filling us up,
Right.
which is incredible.
Right. And there's a sense of joy that comes with seeing that sense of purpose develop in another person. And keeping that in mind, it's also that notion of you're taking these previous experiences, wherever we had come from before, whether it's, your background in nursing, your childhood, whatever it is, all of that at the end of the day is irrelevant and it's total bullshit
Right.
if you don't know how to use that experience and grow from it.
Absolutely. As you said, I'm a professor, and the cohort graduating this year is the first cohort that I have been with since their beginning of their journey till the end, which is a 3-year doctoral program.
It's incredible.
And I think I'm more excited and proud and just like overwhelmed with joy for them than when I was graduating.
gives me goosebumps.
I'm so proud of them. I feel like I've seen them grow over the past 3 years, and I've been there for the first time in this journey every step of the way. And I just am so excited for their graduation party to be there being the biggest cheerleader.
I mean, it's incredible.
It's
and
incredible.
You can see the joy coming, it's emanating from you. It's
Yeah.
oozing from you. There are people who are probably listening out there right now who are saying, this is all good and well, but I'm in a shit show.
Mm-hmm.
Life is really hard right now.
Yeah.
Things are very difficult right now. I'm not in a position to just up and go travel the world or change my career or leave this relationship. What would you say to that person?
So I will say that there's a quote that has stuck with me, and it's J.K. Rowling. And she gave a commencement speech. I'm not sure Cambridge where it was, but the quote is, "And rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life," which is so powerful. I had it hanging on my wall at home. And to just talk a little bit about my story. So I had initially gone to undergrad for chemistry, got a little lost along the way, took some time off from my undergraduate career, and just was very, very, very lost in life. I was struggling with, the inner demons of being gay and how is my family going to accept me? How are my friends going to accept me? And I remember just being like, it can't get lower than this. And then I made a terrible decision one night. I drank and then I drove home. And thankfully I did not hurt anyone, but I got pulled over, I got arrested, and I lost my license. And I was working at a bar, and I was walking from my apartment to this bar, and I just started to cry. And I was like, this can't be me. This can't be the rest of my life. I am not this person. I just have to overcome this.
Yeah.
And this is a really bad situation, but there's so much more out there.
Right.
And I came up with a plan, and I just every day worked at that plan. And around that time, Glee was on. Do you remember Glee, right?
Of course.
And the song Defying Gravity from
Yep.
Wicked. And it was just like about overcoming. And I remember listening to that song and just being like, all right, one day I'm going to defy gravity. Like, I'm going to beat these odds and I am going to accomplish my goals. And I came up with this nursing plan and this nurse anesthesia plan. And I was like, if I ever actually do it, as I'm standing on, the Route 4255 overpass in South Jersey, I was like, if I ever make it there, I'm going to get a tattoo and it's going to say defy gravity.
Oh.
And I'm going to show you.
Stop, show us.
Is it here?
Oh my God, stop.
And I got the numbers
I have
for
chills
gravity
everywhere.
because I am a scientist
Of
and
course.
I love science so much. And I got it, I guess, 4 years ago now. And it was like I actually have goosebumps. I never get goosebumps. What's happening here?
First of all, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Because I think it's powerful to hear somebody's story.
Yeah.
But it's even more powerful and it resonates even more deeply when it's somebody who on the surface appears like they have everything together all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that you probably feel the same way that I do, where because you're capable of being highly functional all the time, people don't necessarily recognize when you've gone through things.
Right. And it was so long ago now. That was 2008. 2008.
Yeah, so it's been a journey. It's
been
journey. Literally a journey.
And I just remember being like, I have to get out of this. I have to get out of this. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, but I have to get out of this. And I think people focus on the long term, which is amazing, right? I think long-term goals are so important. But at the same time, those short-term goals and those little hurdles, like if I can get to this, we're going to celebrate because I passed anatomy and physiology once. Yeah.
It's those micro
victories.
victories.
And then those micro victories add up to a macro victory. And the next thing you know, you're standing in front of a classroom teaching nurse anesthesia residents cardiothoracic anesthesia, which is like...
It's to be able to get yourself to that place and to know that one day you would get there.
Yeah.
I think so much of it comes down to the power of mindset.
Yes.
And, I tell people all the time, and I had somebody else recently comment to me. They said, you look like you've been doing this for years, meaning interviewing guests on the podcast. Yeah. And I'm incredibly thankful for that. But when I tell you I have no goddamn clue what I'm doing, the imposter syndrome runs so deep every single day. And every day I have to wake up and give myself a pep talk. Because despite what I see on paper and despite what everyone else sees, there's still that little girl with her Macedonian immigrant parents learning English from Sesame Street and from Wheel of Fortune, living in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment above our Cuban neighbors with, I'm pretty sure it was haunted by a dead lady, but we'll get into that on an entirely, that's a whole other episode.
That's a whole other episode, for sure.
That, some things explain why I'm hot. That explains why I'm weird. So I know where I came from. Yeah. And there's something wildly humbling about feeling like you have to overcome that sense that you will never be enough.
I have stood there at a national conference and got up to speak about what I'm currently doing for my state organization of nurse anesthetists. And I saw the front row, and it was people that I admire, that have mentored me. And for 1 second, I said, I don't belong here. The imposter syndrome kicked in. The imposter syndrome is so incredibly real. And I looked around, I was like, I have no business being up here speaking. And then I had to take a breath and check myself and be like, Steve, you're up here for a reason. You're speaking to these people for a reason, and they're listening to you for a reason. And that's a really cool experience. And it's really like empowering when someone that mentored you can come up to you afterwards and they're like, you are doing an incredible job and you are going to change this world.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
It's powerful. And I think that when you surround yourself by like-minded individuals, you start to see, and I think this is probably something that's true for you as well, the more you prioritize your own growth, and you changed from saying the days of, being a drunken bartender to now being this upstanding professional. It's not that you're not fun. It's not that you don't still have a great time. It's not that you still don't enjoy life. It's that when you grow, your priorities sometimes shift. And the people who are intended to be in your life will stay there.
1,000%. I've had people that have grown with me through this journey, people from bartending at the beach that are still my best friends in the whole world. I was in my best friend Lauren's wedding a few years ago. We met on a beach bartending together.
Right.
And our lives have just evolved with each other. I've also have friends that are in our profession. I just love people from all walks of life. I think we can learn so much from each other. I think we build each other up. It's incredible. It's incredible.
You know, I think that having a space like this where we can say, we're going to talk about the things that are the hard things.
Yeah.
And the topics that maybe can feel uncomfortable, and use them to connect with one another, because there is a good chance out there's a gay kid in the closet.
Yeah.
Who's struggling right now.
Yeah.
Who's facing his own demons.
Yeah.
Who doesn't know how to talk about these things. Or there's a poor girl with immigrant parents who feels like she doesn't belong in one culture or another. Who feels like she's not seen by one or the other. Or any other permutation or combination of people. And that's why it's so important to have you share with us what your experience has been.
Right. I have a lot of experiences.
Oh,
I'm very experienced.
Well, Steve, it is the Sleeping with Sonja podcast.
I will talk about one thing that really popped into my mind.
Sure.
So I was working at a hospital, and it was right when pronouns became kind of bigger
at the
forefront, and there was a lot of questions about it. And I got a badge that went behind my identification badge, and it was rainbow, and it said he, him, his.
Okay.
And I got a lot of pushback for why this was on my badge. And at the time, I was working, giving anesthesia for a lot of individuals in the transgender community.
Okay.
And I would express to people that being a small child, being a teenager, being who I am now, seeing someone walk into a pre-op bay that's going to give me anesthesia that says he, him, his on his badge would have made a world of difference. Yeah. It's all about visibility.
Sure.
It's all about, hey, look, this guy got to where he is and he's gay.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not the mom who's having surgery, but it's their kid that's there with them that hasn't told anyone that they're gay or lesbian or trans or just unsure.
Right.
Wow, this is representation out there. Oh. And representation matters no matter what anybody says.
I think that having this innate sense of knowing that sometimes you need to meet people where they are and show them that it's okay.
Yeah.
And show them that you are an example of, you can be open with me. You don't have to feel judged with me. People ask me quite often, why do you take the time to study Spanish? I've studied Spanish for 12 years. I'm learning Portuguese now. And people ask me, is it a hobby? And I say, sure, it's a hobby. I love languages. But when I have patients who feel comforted by hearing somebody who understands what they're going through and who can say to them, even something as simple as, let me hold your hand, I'll tell you it's going to be okay.
Right.
The sense of inclusion that goes beyond just being a good healthcare provider. It's that sense of humanity.
Right.
And in a system that seems to strip away humanity year after year, that encourages production pressure no matter what level you're in. This is in education, in healthcare,
across the board.
To have that connection with another person and to just be able to say, I get you and I see you, it's huge.
I think about little Sonja growing up trying to learn English. I think about little Steve who is being told to be one way because he's growing up with his grandparents and they only know this old school way of being and, what's masculine or what's feminine. Like I wasn't allowed to wear pink shirts. I wasn't allowed to, dance when I was a kid because, hey, that's not what boys do. Boys play soccer, boys play football, boys play baseball. And I just think back, did I have any representation? This is a funny story. I hope you like it. I remember 1996. It was a transformative time.
Picture it,
Sicily. And Divas Live came on VH1.
Amazing.
And Shania Twain came out and sang "Man, I Feel Like a Woman."
Oh, Lord.
And when that hit, little gay Steve Pilot came alive, sister. Honey, I was like prancing around the room, doing little flippies on my bed. Like, I was so ready. And I remember my family being like, what is happening? And all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're going to buy you a poster of Shania Twain to hang on your wall because you love her. And that's your person.
Sure.
And I'm like,
no.
Girlfriend,
She's my
she's
spirit
wearing
animal.
leopard and she looks fabulous and I am in love with this.
She's my person, but not that kind of person.
Correct. And I didn't know what was happening,
Right.
but like, it was like one of the first times that I like felt like the true me was coming out.
God, that's incredible. And you were so young.
Young. Yeah. 6th grade, I think.
Yeah.
6th grade. And I, loved it. And then with, some influence of family and friends, you learned you have to repress that.
Of course.
And I think of how there was no strong gay figures out there. And now I could think of a ton.
Yeah, right. And that alone's incredible.
Including but not limited to Ricky Martin,
right?
Who we love.
I mean, saw him 2 nights in a row.
Exactly.
In Miami. Say no more.
But I just think of like those strong, powerful gay individuals
right.
that are so prominent now. And I'm so proud that they grace us in all aspects of pop culture, politics, social media. We didn't have that growing
right.
up. And you didn't have, the little girl who doesn't speak English.
No. And I can't even, and the vision of, in our childhood, especially coming from immigrant parents, there's a very limited mindset, not to their detriment. They were amazing parents and they
right.
worked their asses off. But if you didn't learn, you weren't going to go to college.
Correct.
And if you didn't pick a career that was going to be stable, quote unquote, and traditional, you were basically a failure in their eyes. And I was very blessed to have a mom who was the most progressive human being on the planet.
It's amazing.
And my sister and I were supported fully in the notion of no matter what you do, make sure that you can always take care of yourselves. And for me, the mindset was I didn't know I could live a life without necessarily getting married, having children, doing that whole typical traditional path. And so I proceeded down that path until finally the universe slapped me in the face. And I said, this is actually not for me.
Right.
This is not a situation that is going to allow me to fulfill the things that I want to fulfill. And it's no fault of the other party. It's who I am. And when you suppress your true self, and when you are convinced by the others around you that you need to exist in this box or in this bubble, you don't realize just how much is happening outside of there.
Yeah.
And so once I finally said, guess what? I'm getting divorced. I don't know that I want children. I know that there's a life out there for me that I want to create, and I'm a mother figure to literally everybody in my life.
Including me.
Including you. Including you. I'm an amazing aunt, and I know these things. But once you finally say it out loud, there's a pressure and a weight that's lifted off of your shoulders. And you can say, I can be myself.
Right.
I can be who I know that I am.
Right. It's scary.
It's so fucking scary.
It is so easy to kind of follow this trajectory that was laid out for us and, check the boxes and, like you said, get married, have kids, buy the house, have the career, move to the suburbs, get the minivan.
Take your 2 weeks of vacation a year.
Correct.
December and July, you go away somewhere. You retire at 65. You have your 401k.
Exactly.
Then you die.
So when I said before that you and I have been intertwined in each other's lives, I think of my friend Michelle.
Yes.
Who was my girlfriend in college. Who, even though 6th grade Steve was singing Man, I Feel Like a Woman and knew that they were, not quote unquote normal at the time, I fell back into that, hey, that's not how this is supposed to go. I'm supposed to meet a nice girl. I'm supposed to have a nice family. I'm supposed to have a job that pays the bills. and
Be a provider, essentially.
be a provider.
Uh-huh.
And I was dating this girl. Her name is Michelle. Sonia actually grew up with her sisters, which is so
such
weird.
A wild. It is the smallest world.
It is
on
the
the
smallest
planet.
world.
When I tell you come from all walks of life, this is what we mean.
Exactly. And she was one of the first people I came out to.
Yeah.
We had dated, we had broken up, and she was more of my best friend. I love her. I still love her to this day. She is someone who transformed me into who I am. She is someone who played therapist for me. She is someone who supported me. She is someone who built me up. And I, to my dying day, will say that she is someone who changed me forever.
Yeah, and it's proof that there's love in so many forms.
Correct. And I remember when I told her that I was gay, she was like taken back, and she's like, I did not see this coming. And, this wasn't what I expected. I thought we were going to get married. I thought we were going to, build this life together. And it would have been so easy to do that.
Yep.
And her and I would have had the best life together.
Yep.
But it wouldn't have been fair to her, and it wouldn't have been fair to me. And like you said, I finally said these words out loud, and this weight just came off my shoulders. And I was like, I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm who I am. I'm telling the world who I am.
And it's in that moment where it's literally like you're sitting at a crossroads.
Yeah.
And you have a vision for a life that you know can exist.
Right.
But then there's this unknown. And there's many of us who fear the unknown, so we hesitate and we stutter step and we go down the traditional path.
Right.
And for many people, it's a beautiful existence.
Gorgeous.
If that's perfect for them, that nothing makes me happier than to see my friends' kids and people who are happy and healthy and living their best life. But then there's some of us who just weren't made for that.
Right.
And who know from the depths of our core that there's something else out there for us, and something that requires maybe going against the grain.
Right.
And, just thinking about how you and I have really intertwined for decades, if you think of it that way. We've had lives that have been sticky before we even got to know one another, and yet our paths collided for a reason.
Absolutely.
I remember it was around Christmas, and I had known that I didn't want to have children, but I didn't know how to say it out loud. And I went through a period where I was experiencing severe anxiety, panic attacks on the Parkway, not having time to address them, so compartmentalizing everything, and essentially existing in this version of myself that today I cannot even recognize.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom, who was the most intuitive. She was quite connected. I won't say psychic, but she was kind of psychic. And when you grow up with a mom who's kind of a psychic, you can't bullshit.
You can't.
So I was always a very good girl.
What are you hiding, you know?
She always knew. She always knew. So you couldn't lie to her, whatever. So you had to be honest. And I remember she sat down next to me on the couch, and she must have had a dream. And she said, it's okay if you don't want children. And this is coming from a woman who was like crocheting baby blankets from my childhood. And I looked at her and I said, I don't think I do. And she said, baby girl, being a mother is a cage, and you're a bird. It's okay to let yourself free and be a bird. And she said, I have no regrets about you and your sister. You are my joy and you are my life. But you can do so many things in this life that have nothing to do with being a traditional mother in the traditional sense. And as much as validation doesn't matter, hearing it said out loud by my soulmate, my person, and knowing that it would always be okay was a life-changing moment. Because if you can get through those really challenging rock bottom moments, you can do anything.
Yeah.
You can do anything.
I got chills.
Over and over again.
Over and over
and
again.
It's not even that nippy in here.
I know.
I mean, this is the big stuff. This is the stuff that we need to talk about, because there are so many people out there. And I know, I get a lot of messages in my social media. People who say things to me like, I want to make this jump, but I don't know if I'm ready.
Right.
I think I want a divorce, but I don't know if I'm ready. I think I want to change this career, but I'm too scared. And it's conversations like this that show people you can go through the really scary, terrible times and still end up on the other side of it.
And it's not always easy, right? You and I can both attest to making a change, making a jump, following your heart or your dream. It's never easy.
Right.
And, there's ups and downs. There's highs and lows. Thankfully, typically the highs outweigh the lows, though. And you just got to focus on that long-term plan. If you're not happy in a relationship, why are you in a relationship? You gotta make the change. If you're not happy with who you are, I think you have to dig deep inside and figure out, why are you not happy with who you are? And I think our parents and our parents' generation grew up and they were taught to suppress their feelings.
Sure.
And again, this is a topic for another time,
Sure.
but that was passed down to us. And I love social media because you can put out exactly how you're feeling and find thousands of people that feel the same way.
Right.
And I think by telling my story and you telling your story and, talking to others in everyday life and sharing those, important details about how we got to where we are and why it's important to share, it gives people hope and excitement and an understanding that you don't have to keep those feelings bottled up inside. And once you let that out, you can really grow.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there, because I think that we are not just generationally, but also in our profession. And as you and I were both nurses for a long time before we pursued careers in anesthesia.
Correct.
And we learn to suppress for survival mode. And we learn to compartmentalize because we have no choice. Right? Like, you can't sit and grieve properly when something goes wrong because you have a job to do.
And you have another patient. You have a patient pass away, and you have to get them put together. You have to call the family. You have to do all these things. But you also have your other patient in the room next door whose ventilator is going off, and you have to figure out what's going on. And you've been in this person's life. And, I could still think of people that were my patients or family members of patients that changed me forever because you become part of their family.
It's a long-standing impact.
And when the outcome is not what you're hoping for, it's very trying on the family, but it's also trying on us as healthcare providers.
Sure.
And like you said, you have to come up with coping mechanisms. You come up with ways to grieve on your own without, being physically emotional because you're trying to be strong for the family. But this is someone who was in your life.
Right. And it's, I think it's the ultimate mind fuck to work in an environment where you're expected to exhibit compassion, but to hold back on your empathy.
Yeah.
And as somebody who is naturally highly empathic, and I know you are as well, sometimes setting those boundaries and having a means to safely process what was going on was damn near impossible.
Yeah.
And now when I think back on it, people will often ask me, do you regret becoming a nurse? I say, absolutely not, because of the opportunities it afforded me, the people that I've gotten to meet, the patients I've gotten to care for. But what I do regret is that between leaving almost 6 years in the cardiothoracic ICU, where, to put it bluntly, I've bagged more bodies than I can count, and then jumping into a doctorate program that was intensely rigorous and challenging and stressful without taking a break. It was like you took an already tiny compartment and you squashed it even further.
Yeah.
You didn't even have time to process what you had gone through, and now you're going to experience on the next level. So I tell people, take the time that you need. You feel like you're running behind on a timeline. I assure you, none of us have a goddamn clue what we're doing.
No.
None of us.
No.
Not the most put together person in the room, not the highest expert level person in the room. We are all just showing up every day and trying to figure it out.
I was one of the oldest people in my class when I went through the nurse anesthesia program. And I remember sitting there in one of the first classes and being like, I'm too old for this. I don't belong here. This is not where I'm supposed to be. I'm way behind these 26-year-old kids
Sure.
who, knew this was their goal. They went to undergrad for nursing, graduated in 4 years, worked in the ICU for a year, went right to CRNA school. That was not my journey. That was not your
Sure,
journey.
certainly not. Certainly not.
But there's no timeline on how that journey, there's no standards of what that journey should be. I think if you are late in your nursing career, 30 years in, and you want to be a CRNA, we would love to have you as a CRNA.
Yeah, and
because you should follow your dreams.
And I think it goes for everything. I'm learning another language, and I took salsa lessons because I'm not a natural, but it's fun. It brings you joy. And I think we are so bad at doing things that feel good for fear that we fail. What is failure really? I recently listened to a podcast. It was Stephen Bartlett, and he was discussing the notion of failure.
Okay.
And the idea was every time you fail, all you're doing is gathering evidence. You're just gathering data. And when things don't go according to plan, you are now collecting data for the way that you will pivot and find a new way. When we stop fearing failure, when we stop looking at it as I'm behind, so why would I even bother?
Right.
And we start opening ourselves up to the experiences that we may not actually have done or tried or seen for ourselves, the entire world opens up to you.
I think of all my failures, and there's a very long list of failures, maybe more failures than successes, actually.
Right.
And I can think back to all of those moments and say, okay, what did that teach me? What lesson did I get from that failure? Losing my license, what did that teach me about where I was at and how I didn't want that, and what would I do to grow? I think about failing a class, failing an exam, failing being there for a loved one.
Sure.
Because you're in a rigorous doctoral
Been
program
there.
and you don't have time to show up for someone's birthday.
Sure.
Or
it's that self-imposed pressure.
Correct.
And, at the end of the day, just sitting here with you today and being able to talk candidly and openly about the fact that to be imperfect is to be human.
Yeah. But
you could still be an amazing source of inspiration and joy and an example as a leader. That to me that's why we're doing this.
I don't want to be around people that are perfect because one, nobody's perfect.
Right.
But two, if you think you're perfect, that's not my
Absolutely.
people. I love someone that can call themselves out and be like, you know what? This is a flaw, but it's who I am. And I'm going to let my freak flag fly.
Absolutely. Amen.
Amen.
And on that note, the self-awareness freak flag is where we're going to end it today.
I love it.
Thank you so much for being here with me
I
today.
love you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
As always, it's wonderful to be with you.
We will make sure to share any of your interests, insights, everything in the show notes, your social media, whatever you'd like us to share with others, by all means. And if you're accepting questions from students or future students or whoever that's looking for insight or advice.
Any person that, if there's anything I can ever do, that is me. I would love to help, from how to get into CRNA school to, how to come out to your parents to how to make a cosmopolitan. I got it all.
See, he is the ultimate jack of all trades. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Once again, here at the Sleeping with Sonja podcast. Until next time.